My husband is leaf blowing. Great timing. And now he is on the roof leaf blowing. All right, Casey wins for noisiest family member today. Remember this? Maybe not. Maybe you've seen it. Maybe you've tried some. I don't know. But my personal wonky house quilt has taken on a life of its own. It's way bigger than me at this point. I have since added wonky trees and wonky stars and a wonky apartment building. It's out of control. But it's probably one of the most favorite things I've ever enjoyed the process of doing. It has been so much fun. So I'm happy to document parts of the process with you. Today I'm going to show you how to make the Improv trees that I've been adding to the perimeter of my apartment building. Isn't it cute? Inside the apartment building is all different little animals. I even have some laundry outside of it. But I decided to make a border of Improv trees. And so that's what I'm going to teach you how to make today. I'm Nikki, this is Pin Cut Sew. I am so happy that you're here. I hope that you've tried some liberated houses. I know a lot of people have. I have one friend at church who made one and she said she didn't make things quite wonky enough, so it just looks like she made mistakes. So she's gonna try again. But I think the solution to that is just make more of them so that then that one blends into the more wonky ones and everything looks like it was supposed to be like that in the first place. So the solution is to make more. Okay, so today I'm going to try to I'm going to teach you how to make 3 different styles of trees. One of them I'm making up on the fly, so we'll see how it goes. But there's a basic triangle tree, there's the cute little apple or peach tree, and then there is a new style of tree that I am going to try out. After you understand how the tree top and the stem gets made, you'll be able to make all kinds of trees. But then, in case you are not making a wonky house quilt like me, I'm going to give you some more ideas on how to use them in other projects. So yeah, all you need is some scraps and some open-mindedness, especially if you're a type A person who really likes things neat and straight and uniform. And let's get started. Okay, to get started, you don't actually need to make a pattern like this. You can actually make the tree blocks any size that you want to, sort of depending on what you plan to do with them. My Improv quilts, I didn't need them to be uniform at first, but since I'm kind of like designing it as I go, I did end up needing them all to be 5 inches tall, and then the width could vary. So if you're going to make them all a uniform size, I recommend cutting out a square, the finished size that you need. And then I just sort of drew a line to separate like tree from trunk. I don't have to stay on this line specifically, but it does help me not accidentally make my trees too big. So if you're making larger blocks, that will be a little bit easier to do, but for some reason, sometimes I have a harder time thinking small. I tend to think I'm doing it small enough and I'm not. So I have cut a 5-inch square. Mine don't need to be 5 inches this way, but they do all need to end up 5 inches tall. So then you just need some scraps. You need greens for your trees, browns for your trunks, and then you need some background fabrics. So I'm just gonna use scraps for those also. I have some low volume fabrics picked out. I'll start with this one. Okay, so we're just gonna start with the basic triangular tree. So I have this fun green. Oh, first I'm gonna make the trunk actually. So first I'm gonna cut out a trunk. I think I'll use this little piece for a trunk. And then you just need some little pieces of your background fabric to sew onto your trunk. So when you're improv quilting, everything kind of gets made larger than it needs to be, and then you can cut it down to size. I'm just gonna use this brown piece as is as my trunk. You can make it wonky if you want. You can make it go like this. Maybe I'll make mine kind of go like this. So I'm gonna sew my pieces on at a sort of an angle and see how that looks. Just gonna sew right here. Making them plenty big means that you have room to play when you trim it down to make it the shape that you want it to be, or to make everything kind of straight. Okay, then I'm gonna sew this one on this direction, just a slight angle. My husband is leaf blowing. Great timing. So now I have my little trunk. I'm not going to trim it down yet at the bottom, but I am going to make a straight line across the top. Because while you do have a lot of freedom. Where's my ruler? Literally just had it. Found it. While you do have a lot of freedom in your lines, you do need some straight line as like a horizon point for you to be able to build the rest of your block upon. So this will be my joining line. So now I'm going to make my little tree part. I chose this. I think this is really cute. And for the triangular tree, you're just going to literally cut a triangle, making sure that it's smaller than the portion of your paper you need it to be. Okay, I'm just going to whack a triangle and see what happens. Okay, looking good. Let's make sure that my block is going to fit. Yes, it is. So now I need to use my same background fabric and create, what do you call it? I don't know, background. Because I don't have very good spatial intelligence, I cut these pieces way larger than they need to be. It's not wasteful because these pieces go right back into the scrap bin. Okay, so I'm going to sew this piece on one side of my tree. I'm not going to sew it right on the edge because I want room for trimming. Press it, try it on. Okay, then this piece is going to go all the way up into the other sky piece. So I'm going to stitch it on this way. You can trim this if you feel like you need to, but I'm going to trim it after. Okay, now I will trim this off to reduce bulk. And then I'll press this seam. Okay, so now I have my tree coming together. So now I need to create a straight line across here so I can join it to my trunk. So now I have a straight line and a straight line. I'm going to line them up. Make sure my trunk is in the middle of my tree or wherever I want it. This is cute. It looks like a mushroom tree. And I'm going to stitch this seam. The bigger they get, the more I tend to put a pin or two. Just to make sure things stay together, especially because it's often on the bias. I don't want it to get warped. Either direction seems to want to be pressed up towards the tree. I like how there's one flower in here. That's cute. Okay, so now I can use my paper template to just make it a 5-inch square. Or you can just use your ruler if you prefer. I should probably get one of those turning cutting mats. That would be useful. Let me know in the comments if you have one and if you feel like it's handy enough to spend money on it. There's my cute little tree. That one's really cute. I definitely could have made the triangle smaller, but this is the fun of improv. You don't really know how it's going to turn out, and every little tree will be so different. So for this tree, let me show you. I probably should have filmed this before I put this whole thing together, but for this one, I made a piece here at the bottom with 3 trunks, and I made 3 separate tree parts, pieced them together. It was tricky to kind of make sure I was spacing out the trunks. So in this case, I made the tree tops first, and then I was able to space the trunks out to where I needed them. But same concept, each tree top was made the same as this one was, and then I pieced the trunks the same, only there's 3 of them. So next we're going to make this apple tree. This one's really cute. Okay, so I made an apple tree for the first one. This time I'm going to put one of these peaches in there as my little center. So let me pick one. I think I want an orange one. I don't want to be wasteful, so I'll pick one over here. Pick this guy. I'm going to cut him out bigger than he needs to be. If you watched my Quilt As You Go Crazy Quilted Pumpkin Poster tutorial, this is a very similar process. Basically, add strips at angles to my peach until it makes a circle around it. Okay, so I have some green strips at the ready. Here's one. I'm just going to make this one. Let's see. I'm going to make it go this way. Make sure that it doesn't go over my peach. Okay, so I'm just going to sew it on like this. Trim, press, and add the next green strip. Okay, this one I want to kind of go this way, so I'm going to sew it here. Okay, you can see that I'm putting my peach on point. Add some little extra interest in there, kind of like this one. Just put this guy here. Trim and press. And then let's see, one more. I like this one. Okay, so when you're placing these, you really just want to make sure it goes all the way across and you're not leaving any seams. So if this one got sewn here and I have a hole here, you want to really avoid that. So just make sure that it's well beyond all of the other seams you have already. Trim and press. It's like the bend and snap in Legally Blonde. Bend and snap. Trim and press. Okay, so this gets a little bit tricky for my mind because it's weird for me to try to make a, what shape is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, an octagon, stop sign shape. But I can see that I have a straight line at the top. So let's see, let's straighten the top. And then this one can stay. And then I have a straight line on the side. Okay, and then I have diagonal here. So I'm going to straighten the bottom. Diagonal here. Might need to create more of a diagonal here. and then straighten this side. Nope, because I need a diagonal here too. Okay, so I'm gonna straighten here. Don't worry, if you mess up, remember this is liberated quilting. It's gonna be fine. Any shape is a fine shape for an improv tree. Okay, that's cute. So next what I need to do, so I need to pick a background fabric now. I'm going to pick this one. Hopefully I have enough of it. And the first thing I need to do is add corners so that I have a complete square, so that this block is square to work with. I don't need these to be very big because they're pretty tiny. Okay, so I'm just gonna go put corners on all the corners. Although I am very grateful to him for doing yard work because that is one thing I do not enjoy. Okay, so I have sewn corners on all 4 of them, and I'm gonna press them out, and then I can trim them into a square to work with for the rest of my background fabric. It looks a little weird now, but don't worry. Okay, you can go ahead and trim those into corners if you want to. Let's see, let's just trim them straight off using my already straightened sides as a guide. It does not have to be a perfect square. It can still be wonky. See, mine is not a square, but that's fine. So now I'm going to make this into like a log cabin block, except I'm not going to add a piece along the bottom because that's where my trunk piece goes on. So let me just cut some strips. This one can be a little narrower if I want it to be than my 5 inches, but if you're making it a certain size, you want to make sure you cut your strips wide enough to cover your pattern. In my case, like this one's skinny, the width of mine doesn't really matter, and I don't actually want mine to be uniform because of what I'm trying to accomplish here. Okay, so I'm going to add a strip to the sides first. Press those out. I don't actually usually trim this much. I'm just doing it to demonstrate for you. Usually I just start sewing and then I whack it off. Okay, I'm actually gonna make this piece longer, so I can make it a little wider if I need to. Let me straighten this bottom edge, and then I can make my trunk. This trunk I think I'm gonna make a little bit longer like this one, because I think that's really cute. I will go with this brown, and then I need some pieces of my background fabric. I want my trunk to be pretty skinny, so I'm gonna sew this piece here, and then let's see, how skinny do I want it? Bottom of the tree is pretty skinny. You wanna make sure you don't make the trunk wider than your tree, although it will be 1/4 inch under. So let me sew this piece. I want my trunk to be skinny. I'm gonna sew it here. Just noticed the video looks all dark. That's better. Sorry, Layla, you have to edit that in the dark like that. So I have my tree and I have my trunk, and now I just need to create some straight lines. I already have a straight line here. I'm going to make a straight line across here to sew it on. Now I can go ahead and sew my tree onto its trunk, making sure my trunk is centered in the tree. Okay, there we go. I think I'm going to press this away from the tree top. Very cute. Okay, now I can trim. I'm gonna make this one skinnier, I think. But let me make sure I get my 5 inches that I need. This ruler is exactly 5 inches. So I'm lining it a line up with my middle line that's already straight. And then I can just cut it to 5. And then since mine don't need to be uniform, I can make this whatever width I want to. But at this point, it does need to be squared up. Okay, here's my little peach tree. It's so cute. Okay, so now I have made a triangle tree and I've made a fruit tree. I had a few other ideas for trees. One of them, it kind of looked like this. I'm gonna wing this right now. You get a pen that you can see. So I'm going to make like a square here and then my background, and then I'm going to make like a rectangle here and then another rectangle and maybe a 4th rectangle. And then these will be background. Does that make sense? And then it will have a trunk. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to use 4 different little green pieces. Let me choose a background. I'm going to use the bees. So let's see here. I just need a tiny piece for the top. I think I'll cut my green pieces first. And then I'll make a rectangle out of this. I want to make sure I'm not going to make them too big to fit in my pattern, but they will be a 1/4 inch smaller. This one next. Yeah, I think I'll just do the 3 rows. Okay, now let me cut some strips of bees. Okay, and then I'll need one for the top. Okay, so first I'm gonna go surround this top fabric with my background fabric by sewing a piece on either side. Press, and I will straighten as I go this time. because in this case, I do need to be able to sew some straight lines together. Okay, I'm going to repeat that with the other 2 tree layers. So now I have these tree tiers. Kind of looks like a birthday cake, but let's see how it goes. I'm gonna center this one here and sew it on. And then I'll center this one here and sew it on. Let's see how that looks. Pretty darn cute. Okay, I am going to put a top across it. And then I can make my trunk. I'm gonna use this cute brown acorn fabric. Cute. Okay. Now, one thing I don't like to be wonky is the trunk. Like, I don't want the trunk pointing out like this. I like it to be straight. So I tried to, because I started with a straight line here, I can use that to straighten up this whole piece. Or I can just make a line go down the center of my trunk when I straighten it. So I'll have a straight trunk. Oh, this is cute. Okay, let me just center this on and stitch it. Oh, that is really cute. All right, now I can cut it 2 sides. Make sure you leave room for seam allowances at the top. We almost made it crooked. At this point, you do want to make it a square or a perfect rectangle. You just want 90-degree angles. I'm looking for something very specific. Okay, I spent like 5 minutes looking for it and determined it won't work. I want to put something cute like to the side of the tree. So I remembered I had these mice, but I think they're just too big. But I found these cute little geese instead. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to cut them out. Okay, so I'm going to cut around the geese. Now my husband's like literally outside my window with his ladder. I want to put the little geese on the ground here. So what I'm going to do is just slash this. Make a straight slash. I'm going to top my geese with a background piece. Here is my background piece. Okay, they are. Gosh, I lost them while looking for that other thing. Going to put a strip above my little geese. Make sure it's tall enough. I don't want the train on there. I'm going to place this pretty strategically. I can do this kind of by finger pressing a seam here because I want it to fall right above the geese. Like this. Flip that, I'm just gonna go stitch it right there in my crease. Trim this off so those colors don't show. Okay, so I want my geese to look like they're kind of on the ground. So I'm going to place them so that my 1/4-inch seam will be right at this one's feet. And I'm going to stitch it on in this direction. At this point, I'm going to square it up because I already made straight lines on this block. And then that piece that I cut off, this one, I'm gonna stitch it right back on. Although then it will have all those lines in it. I don't know, it kind of looks weird. No, I like it. I'm not gonna put that back up because this piece is gonna get sewn to another tree piece and then it will already be surrounded by more background fabric. So I'm just gonna square it up like this. And then when it gets sewn onto more trees and they both have grounds, then they'll just look like cute little geese walking in the path. Okay, so that is 3 different tree ideas for you. You could get very creative with this. I also made this one. I ended up not liking it because the trunk is off center and I don't know. I think I should have put a larger triangle on the bottom, smaller one on the top. So I might try this one again, but I think once you understand the concept of how the tree top and then the trunk piece gets made, you'll be able to make all kinds of different trees. And I can't wait to see how creative you get with them. I'm going to go ahead. I've been putting 1.5-inch green strips on the bottom so that it creates like a border for my trees and apartments. Whoops, I just dropped something behind my desk. I don't know what it was. And so I'm going to continue making trees here. I put a little bike in between. I'm going to continue making trees and then I'll sort of give you a glimpse on how this quilt is going together. Obviously, I don't have much of a plan. It's kind of a plan in my mind, but in case you're not making a wonky house quilt or whatever, let's talk about some things that you can do with these tree blocks once you have enough. Okay, so if you are not making a wonky house quilt like me, you can turn these trees into all kinds of other projects. If you saw recently my quilted pumpkin coasters, you could actually make quilted little tree coasters. I also have another tutorial for quilted coasters. I'll link that because that would be a really easy way to do this. They would make the cutest gifts. I've also seen entire quilts made out of just trees, rows of trees. The bigger you make them, the fewer you have to make, but it would also be really cool to make rows of small trees. You could make them into little mini quilts. What if you put like little red and white and like gold pom-poms on them for ornaments and made Christmas trees or little buttons. You could also make them into pillows. I thought it would be really cute to make 3 Christmas trees bigger than this and make a quilted pillow with them, like a rectangular pillow. Let's see, you could make them into little ornaments if you stuffed a little square and put a hanger in it. So there's all kinds of things you can do with these, not just a quilt. But speaking of my quilt, I am going to try to document parts of this process, but it actually takes kind of a lot of concentration to work out the little details. The idea just kept growing on me and I was like, what am I doing? I made the apartment building for the middle and then it all started to come together and I decided I'm gonna make the houses look like streets of houses. That's where the tree idea came from. I'm gonna try to put some little cars on roads in there. I'm not going to free piece the cars. I'm going to use a car fabric that I already have. I put some little weather pictures and some star blocks for the corners, but the corners I was having problems dealing with, like how do you turn corners? Anyway, it was kismet that I happened to go to our used bookstore as I was making all of these components and I found this book, Liberated Medallion Quilt, and I thought, ding ding ding, it's a medallion quilt. That's what I'm making. A medallion quilt is basically when you have a centerpiece and then you create borders around it until it's a big quilt. This is fun for like quilting bees because everybody can make a center and then you swap and everyone adds a border and then you swap and everyone adds another border. Super fun, right? So anyway, once I figured out that that's what I was doing, I purchased this book. And she has all kinds of fun ideas for how to deal with the corners, how to deal with it when you're making a border and it doesn't end up perfectly the right length or whatever. She has the best tips in here. She even has a photo of a liberated medallion quilt that Martha Washington made. Let me show you because it's very impressive. Here it is. Isn't it beautiful? She actually dealt with some of those issues I was mentioning in very creative, ingenious ways. And I thought it was also interesting that she was talking about in here that we think of traditional quilting as very square and straight and precise and traditional. But actually, there are a lot of improv quilts out there from our earliest American ancestors. So that made me feel kind of good. So these are all liberated blocks just put together in wonky, do what you want kinds of ways, and this is just so right up my alley. So I'll try to link this book. I bet you can still get it used on like thrift books. It's by Gwen Marston, who is, I think, from Paducah, Kentucky, where they have the Quilt Week. I now live in Kentucky and I just found out about Quilt Week. If you've been, you have to tell me about it because I think I need to plan a trip, maybe with my mom. Okay, so yeah, anyway, that was a rambling little outro, but I'm just going to keep working on my little trees. I'm going to make another border for my quilt and I will show you when it's all ready. And I will show you after I add that border on the other side. And then I have no idea where I'm going to go from there. We'll just find out together. Bye.